What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and I wanted to go into a game I really do like for technically tonight. And I've been in a little bit of a rut, so I do understand that, and I'm no, most of you guys understand. It's always about the long term, but never fun to have a bad week. So missed the last couple primetime games. We pushed the Eagles on Thursday, but just haven't been nailing primetime. So I'm hoping we get that rectified. Now, I don't usually go into numbers, as you guys know, but I was reading this article, and besides the fact that there's a glaring disparity in the stats, I just to the point where it makes you wonder again why it's a 2-point game outside of it, of course, being set up. I found a couple interesting numbers, and I know people go into these a lot, and not just numbers, but symbols. So obviously we have the two dead running backs, right? Jim Brown versus Franco Harris. Both wore the same number. I believe they were both 32. And they both died last year. Pittsburgh has another running back named Harris. He actually made a pretty nice nice reception for a touchdown that was very reminiscent of Franco Harris's immaculate reception. And it was like the week after he died, or the week he died. So I thought that was interesting. And Harris was talking about a couple interesting things. He had done a commercial a few days ago how he mentioned how he won comeback player in college. And I thought that was kind of odd because he went to Pitt. I think it was like a little bit of a calm that DeMar is going to be winning it. But anyway, like I had gone into, I think there's definitely symbolism in this game, and the two running backs is where I expected it. So I'm like, well, let me see. I already found the spread interesting because it's going between 2 and 3, right? Which is obviously their number 32 reversed. But I'm going down, and I outside of seeing stuff that just doesn't make sense, like the Browns playing amazing this year so far in the one game, but still looking good. Pittsburgh looking bad. The stats, which do not make sense at all looking at the line. I found this very interesting right here. And again, I give this more credence now because we've seen ESPN go out of their way now to put out articles. They put out an article today about how the Rams backdoor covered, or they backdoor pushed the spread. And they did like a laughing emoji. It's like, there's no reason for that. Like, it's not funny. Like, only if you're laughing at the people who got, pushed at the end. But it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, ESPN talking about the spreads, again, outside of to put it in our face, like they did with the ridiculous Colorado game. Sanders gets the score to start the game and to end the game. By the way, that game ended at 2. I think I explained. I think I went into this. It was 2:22, and I'm like, oh, it's going to end at 2:22. And then it ended a minute later, and then it took me a second to realize, and I'm like, oh, 2:23. That's the exact, the Mason number. So now, a little bit of a pickle, right? Is it going to be 2:23, or is it going to be 2:32? They love their palindromes, and they love, obviously, using the skull and bones number. I think it's going to be 2:32. The reason being, then you have 2:32, obviously. There's two players that are number 32, Harris and Jim Brown. So I think it's going to go to 23 and 2, which again it's their numbers in a palindrome form. And again, I take it symbolism. I did one short, just kind of messing around with how I use gematria. And yeah, so we would have two 32s, and I think that's exactly what we're going to have. So, and by that I mean probably both running backs do well, Chubb and Harris here. I expect a great game out of Najee Harris. So anyway, I like Pittsburgh for this win, and they go into Tomlin's record, and I found that interesting because 26, 6, and 1, I always see that number sequence. That's the Kobe sequence, 1, 2, 6. So I found that very interesting, and it looks more appealing to me than 25, 7, and 1. So I know that's kind of goofy logic, but it also lines up with my Tomlin narrative. You can see how they're saying this team has not lost at home in such a long time against the Browns, and it's because they've had great coaches. They've had 3 coaches over the last 100 years. And I don't think they're, especially with the coaching narrative with Dion, I don't think they're going to throw that out the window now by having Mike Tomlin just look bad, and after Bill Belichick lost. So I could be wrong, but the odds in 2 primetime games in a row, because this one's going to get way more public money than the Panthers, the odds of 2 primetime games in a row going paying the public out, in my opinion, because I think the public's going to be all over the Browns. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think the Amari Cooper injury is going to be way bigger than they're letting on. We're probably going to see a very good Pittsburgh defense. So this is like an intuition game where it's just poking at me. Like, I don't know why, but I like Pittsburgh. It's not just narratives. And then when I looked into the numbers, I found them very interesting. Again, it could go both ways, but I like the 232. Again, they each had a running back number 32 versus the 223, which, again, the skull and bones, obviously, they're going to use that a lot. But I think that's more of a universal thing. This record is more indicative of the teams themselves. So, again, you combine that with the fact that it's a trap line and the fact that it's Mike Tomlin. And they're even talking about traps now. The analysts will say, this game looks like a trap. And it just stuff they were never bringing up in the past. They were never talking about these issues. It was brought to my attention that the announcers must have said the word script like 12 times in the Deion Sanders game. I guess Shedeur Sanders talked about running. He said something very close to what I said. I called it running the Brady drill. I think he said channeling his inner Brady or something. I had read it afterwards. Here again, 223 again. Now that's interesting because you can say, oh, that lines up with 223. But I just think they love getting these numbers in here in some kind of sequence, because, again, whenever they put something in parentheses, they're basically saying, like, this doesn't need to be said, but we're going to say it anyway. So I find that interesting. So that's just something I found live. So you could say, oh, well, 223, 22, that means they're going to go to 22-3. It's possible. But, again, I think these numbers are more just indicative of the teams themselves. And I think that I see it in baseball all the time where it could go either way. I think they just love getting this number in there in some way or another. So you see they're saying Pickett threw 2 picks in the 46 after just having one. So he had a rough game against the Niners, and they might be trying to get a nice little comeback story for him. I think he's going to have a nice game. Also, TJ Watt, you see the next one will set a franchise record. It makes sense they win in that performance. He might get a couple because they're not fans of James Harrison, if you remember. I don't think he followed the script, and I think that's why he got booted out of the league so early. Whether it was the way he hit players or maybe he just didn't want to lose. But I have a feeling Harrison's going to be passed. Let's see. Okay, he moved into a tie. Yeah, so he would pass him. So he's definitely going to get a sack. I think that's a great prop to play. And yeah, I think some other teams, it would make some sense to have them win here in Pittsburgh. I get it's a big deal for the Browns, but to me, it would be anticlimactic because the Browns are supposed to be really good this year. The Steelers are not supposed to be that good this year. So I could see the story, Cleveland starts off 2-0 for the first time, probably in a very long time. And I could see that narrative. Again, I just don't think they're going to pay traps out a few days in a row. And I really like the fact that the Steelers have a Harris. And like I said, with the numbers, it can go either way. I find probably the tiebreaker would be the Kobe number here because I've seen this number so many times, and it's not because I look for it. You guys know I don't do gematria. It's just been forced down my throat. So they go to 26, 6-1 in my opinion. That would be interesting. Again, we got the Kobe number. Kobe, I think there was a Kobe Johnson, if I'm not mistaken, that played yesterday. I can't remember what team he played on. It was in college, so I guess 2 days ago. But yeah, to me, everything lines up. And again, if you look at these statistics, I'm not saying this is going to happen every game. And I get it's early in the season, but this is kind of how they were coming into the season. Like, we didn't expect the Steelers to be good. I don't know why Nick Wright and some analysts who act like it's real are acting like the Steelers are a good team. They're not. They suck. But I do think they're going to get some of these home wins. Tomlin's never had a losing season at home. There's a lot of narratives that I think line up for Pittsburgh. So anyway, you see again, now this is against the Niners, I get it. But even on offense, the 29, they gave up 20. They're the third worst defense is what I'm trying to say against the rush. The second worst against the pass. So I just think it's awful. Overall they're the third worst against the rush. They're the second worst, about the 11th worst against the pass. And then their offense is just bad too. Now you can see the passing game's okay. Now the rushing game, they didn't really get going. So I think this is going to be a great game for Harris. If you're picking props, I like him to I'd probably like him to get a little bit of everything. A touchdown, like 80 rushing yards, like 30, 40 receiving yards. He might even score 2. I think Pickett's going to look good too. I really do. I think this, I don't see Pittsburgh doing much this year, but I also don't see the Browns like just running through the league. They could start off great. I'm not saying they won't. They obviously they set different precedents. And I was going into the Kobe number again. Here we go. If the Steelers win, they're at 81. So I just noticed. And then if you look at the reverse, 126, right? So again, for me, it's just when I see a bunch of different number sequences. I don't just look for one or type in a word like I'll type in Pittsburgh Monday night and then see all the combinations, because you can go a million ways with that. But when I see like Kobe, as we're talking about it, here we go again, January 8th, 18, Kobe number. So when I see many, many, many examples of the Kobe number, 81 would be a great one, and it's in the same sequence. 81, 621 is the reverse of when he was I'll say his life was ended shortly, unfortunately. So, it just, and honestly, I have a theory that he may have understood that people were on to him. Don't forget, Mambasita and was taking on not only Nike, but he was taking on Disney. He was going across the world and finding out things that he probably wasn't too happy about. He had a lot of leverage. So, and I'll get into the whole Kobe thing soon. What's interesting is he talked about with Luka when he came to the game where Luka was at. He said, "Oh man," first thing he said was, "How's your health?" And then Luka's like, "It's good, because he was heckling him in Slovenian. I'm sure you guys heard that story. And then he went on to say, "Oh man, you look good. I'd like to see you in different shoes. You looking good though," which is interesting. I thought that was a little bit of shots fired. Obviously wanted to separate from Nike. He was doing his own supplement company. He was doing a lot of good things, and obviously they did not want that. So again, when I see the Kobe number so many times, and I feel like Kobe's just etched into sports fandom, he's going to always be there. That's why we see the 126 so much. And I went into before how the 126, I thought it was interesting because it's A to Z, and obviously gematria is A to Z. So I think that's a big part of the reason we get the 126 so often. So I could be wrong, but yeah, the Tomlin narrative. The Kobe numbers here. We got the 80, obviously 81, and as I went into earlier, the 26, 6, and 1. I think that's interesting that it's in there twice, as is we could get 2, 3, 2, two guys that wore 32, obviously, that they're going to be talking about. They'll probably talk about both of them. They each have competent running backs that can have games that are symbolic of them. And then the 223 attempts, just the numbers in there again, it's just really, really interesting. So yeah, I like I said, you see a lot of 18s, you see a lot of the same numbers, and I don't think it's a coincidence. So I'm sure the gematria people will love this. Like I said, I don't really call it gematria. To me, it's more just symbolism. But yeah, so I like Pittsburgh to win this game. I think Pickett looks good. That way they can have a talking point about him. And to me, it just makes sense. They'll keep Pittsburgh looking like they might have a chance because of Tomlin. They are making a big deal about coaching this year. So as I went over in my last video, this is the reason I use my system. My logic was, okay, I'm going to take the Patriots and the Steelers because I don't think the public will be paid out 2 games in a row, and I certainly don't think they're going to make top coaches look crappy 2 weeks in a row, or 2 games in a row. The only reason they would is if they're trying to say, okay, the old guard, they're behind us. Look at Dion, he won, and all these old head lost. But I don't think, A, Tomlin's not really an old head, and B, I just don't think that's going to be the narrative. I really don't. I just think they're trying to obviously do the best they can to deceive, entertain, but also make as much money. This game, again, I see money coming in on the Browns. If they're losing, people will probably put it on them, thinking they could come back. And I think it's going to be a very close game. I almost wanted to take the +2 because I was thinking, what if it is a 1-point loss? But I like the value in taking the win, and I think they're going to win because of the numbers I went over and the narratives. I think TJ Watt's going to look good, and in general, they'll have Pickett look good. They're talking about this guy for comeback player of the year. He's not going to win it, but the fact that he's even in that conversation, it's like we saw with the Dolphins. Obviously Tua didn't do amazing. I thought the Patriots were going to win. Like I said, I took it more as a contingent, but they do stick with narratives, and they're like, oh well, 2-1 now. He's even better. So they're really going to stick with some narratives, in my opinion, and Pittsburgh being tough at home is just a narrative I think it makes sense to stick with, especially because now later in the season when Baltimore's in Pittsburgh, it justifies making it like a 3-point spread. If Cleveland destroys Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, then Baltimore's playing them in Pittsburgh, or a team that should theoretically beat them. I don't know who plays in Pittsburgh this year. We'll say Kansas City or something. To me, then now they can't, realistically, get the people to buy. It's a 3-point game. But if Pittsburgh wins this game, looks pretty good at home, looks like they're at least competent, as good as Cleveland, then the public's more likely to take them at home against a team like Baltimore, who will probably clean their clock. So that's just my logic. I think for now, the Pittsburgh's going to get it to 1-1. And again, it's just, this Pittsburgh got 20 straight wins and moved to 21. Obviously, we're seeing a ton of Dion stuff, so a lot of it's very interesting to me. Now, again, it doesn't mean that all these numbers are perfect. But again, I was just looking at the article for the narratives. And based off of the way that they were leading, it's like, okay, they're basically telling us the Browns are the better team. But then on top of that, when I saw the different variations of the Mason number, and I also saw the running back combination, again, I think that's big. It can't be overlooked, Harris and Brown, considering it's saying the first time Cleveland's won 1989. So you're talking a long time ago. So they're basically taking us back to when they played. Now, obviously, they played before that, but my point is, it's just a historic game, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the Kobe numbers are going to bear out. Tomlin moves to 26, 6-1. I think the Steelers have, like I said, a pretty good game. Defense probably plays really good. I like Watson for an interception, and I like a few sacks. Not sure who's going to get them, but I'm sure Watt's going to get at least the leading sack so he can pass Harrison, who I don't think they're a big fan of. And again, Harris, it's not his exact name, but it's interesting. And again, they go into how the last meeting was on 1/8. Just all very interesting. So the big three reasons, again, is symbolism, narratives with Tomlin, and most importantly, I don't think they're going to pay the public. Again, when they just got done paying them, there's no way the public was on the Patriots. So you can let me know what you think. I think we get back on track in a good way here. And I think Pittsburgh wins. Again, it's going to be a leg 3 for a New England loss. So take care, everybody, and happy earnings.